This channel is mainly about reading Thai, and I haven't done much about speaking. But today I'm just going to go through 5 basic questions that foreigners can ask Thais in Thai. And the format will be that first of all I'll go through each of them and give you a sort of brief description. And then I'll get my Thai assistant, my wife actually, to ask these questions so you can hear them from a native speaker. When people learn a second language, unless they start learning at a very young age, they're going to have an accent. And in addition with Thai, you've got a problem with tones. And I know that my pronunciation is heavily accented and my tones are wrong. So I don't want to teach you to speak the same way that I do. I don't mind teaching people about reading, but speaking is another matter. So with anything spoken, I'd like really to have a native speaker demonstrate. One thing that's extremely important in Thai is the use of polite particles. When you're in Thailand, you will hear these all the time at the end of sentences. It's ka for female and krap for male. And when people don't use these, their speech can be considered very rude. And even though I'm not a native speaker, I can still pick up when people are being polite and when they're not being polite. I'll give you an example. In English, if you go into a shop and the assistant says, "What do you want?" that's rude. If they say, "What would you like?" that's polite. And it's the same in Thai. If I go into a shop and they just say, "Awarai," without a polite particle, that's rude. But if they say awarai krap or awarai ka, that's fine. So it's very important that you use polite particles at the end of questions and the end of answers. And later in the video, when you hear my wife, you will hear her saying ka. And if I was asking the questions, I would say krap. And I really can't stress enough how important it is to use these polite particles. The tones and pronunciation of Thai are quite difficult, but the grammar is actually quite simple. So look at question 1, and the first word is chil, which is name. Arai, name what? That's how Thais ask, what is your name? And on its own, that would be quite impolite, but as I just said, if you add a polite particle, it becomes polite. So, chil arai ka, or chil arai krap, what is your name? And Thais don't tend to use personal pronouns. I could say kun, you, chiarai, what's your name? But it's not really necessary because it is quite obvious anyway. And the other thing, I think I've explained this in a previous video, is that Thais have 2 names. They have a real name, which I use for official purposes, and they have a nickname, and they use their nickname most of the time. And I sort of know what are real names and what are nicknames, but it may not be obvious to foreigners. But if the name is very short or it sounds a bit comical, sort of, Din Din or Bing Bing or Ya Ya, that's a nickname. If it's quite long, it's probably their real name. So if you think they've told you their real name, you can then ask for their nickname. So what you would say is Chilen Arai Krap, which is like, what is your nickname? So with my wife, her real name is Yawalak. So if I asked her Chi Arai Krap and she told me Yawalak, I would think, oh yes, that's her real name. So I'm going to ask for her nickname. So I would ask Chilen Arai Krap. If you want to know where someone comes from, you can think of the English question, where do you come from, and then translate that into Thai, Majak Nai. The problem is, although there are no real sort of tense structures in Thai, if you ask Majak Nai, Thais hear that as sort of present perfect, where have you come from? So they will tell you where they've just come from, and that's not what you want to know. So if you want to really know where someone comes from, you can ask question 2. Pen, which is like verb to be, con, people or person, tinai, where. And they will then tell you where they originally come from. So pen con tinai ka or pen con tinai krap. Question 3 is about work. What's your job, or what do you do for a living? And once again, the simple Thai grammar really helps us here. So ngan is work, and tam is to do or to make. So tam ngang, do work, arai, what? Do work what? That's the question. And then just add the polite particle at the end. So tam ngang arai krap. Quite simple. The next question, question 4, asks if there's anything interesting around here. And Thais use this word, me, which means have, far more than English people use have. So in English we might say, how many people are there in your family? And with Thais they say, like, your family have how many people? Let's look at the question. So tini, which is here, me, have, arai, have what? And sonjai is interested. And with English adjectives, we can have either an ing or an ed ending. And with Thai, if you put a na prefix, that's the same as sort of changing the English adjective from ed to ing. So sonjai, interested, na sonjai, interesting. And this word, mai, at the end, turns the sentence into a question. So, tini, mi arai, na sonjai, mai ka, mai krap. Asking questions about Thai food in Thailand will always win you friends. And that's what the last question's about, question 5. Chuai, help. Net nam, recommend. So basically, can you help to recommend? Ahan is food. Thai food. With Thai, the sentence structure is noun adjective instead of the adjective noun that we use in English. Ti is the relative pronoun, like that is or who is. And aroi is delicious. So can you help recommend Thai food that is delicious? And dai mai at the end is like can you, and then you just finish it off with a polite particle. So I'll just go through the whole sentence. Chuai net nam ahan Thai ti aroi dai mai ka dai mai krap. One of the problems when you're first starting out and learning how to ask questions is that you might not understand the answer you get, and there's not much you can do about that. You just need to learn some more. But if, for example, you ask question 3, tam ngang arai krap, what do you do for a living? And the person says pen kru, and you don't know what that means. It actually means a teacher, like my wife. You can say, koto, sorry, me kao jai, kru ku arai krap. Like, I don't understand what that word is. What is it? And in most cases, the Thai person will be able to tell you what the English is. But apart from that, it's just a case of you needing to expand your Thai vocabulary. As I've explained, my spoken Thai isn't good. My pronunciation and tones are poor because I didn't start learning until I was into my 40s. So now I will let you hear the correct version of the questions from a native speaker. Question 1. What's your name?
ชื่ออะไรคะชื่ออะไรคะชื่ออะไรคะ
Question 2. Where are you from?
เป็นคนที่ไหนคะเป็นคนที่ไหนคะเป็นคนที่ไหนคะ
Question 3. What do you do for a living?
ทำงานอะไรคะทำงานอะไรคะทำงานอะไรคะ
Question 4. Is there anything around here that's interesting?
ที่นี่มีอะไรน่าสนใจไหมคะที่นี่มีอะไรน่าสนใจไหมคะที่นี่มีอะไรน่าสนใจไหมคะ
Question 5. Can you recommend some delicious Thai food?
ช่วยแนะนำอาหารไทยที่อร่อยได้ไหมคะช่วยแนะนำอาหารไทยที่อร่อยได้ไหมคะช่วยแนะนำอาหารไทยที่อร่อยได้ไหมคะ
As ever, I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, comments or other feedback, please leave them below. And thank you for watching.